Hey, this is Bryant Arnold, also known as Dragon from Skinwalker Ranch, and you're listening to That UFO Podcast.
Michael, if you don't mind giving us 5 more minutes of your time, not even that, I just want to get your thoughts. So the quickfire round, I normally ask for a couple of words or a sentence just on a topic or a person. Some of them we've kind of touched on, but just as a very, very quick summary, if you don't mind, and then we'll finish.
Let's do it.
So the first one, we've talked about him non-stop, but it's going to be Steven Greers.
Misunderstood.
The next one would be To the Stars Academy.
Definitely not what it seems. And certainly well-intentioned, but misguided.
Extraterrestrials.
Oh, the most misunderstood of all. Extremely advanced, extremely spiritually advanced biological entities, not to be confused with interdimensional beings, ghosts, angels, demons, or Richard Doty in an alien costume.
Thanks. Skinwalker Ranch.
Overplayed. I'm kind of bored with it. It's definitely real. Lots of crazy shit going on there. It's my understanding, but don't necessarily quote me on this, that the reason why it's such a hub for activity is that there were a lot of advanced USAP, which is Unacknowledged Special Access Program, experiments going on there. And they, kind of like Stranger Things kind of stuff. So that has kind of turned it into a hot spot. But I haven't studied it too closely because, I'm fascinated with the wider phenomenon, not just this one location that everyone obsesses over for some reason.
That's awesome. 2 more. That one is consciousness.
The only thing we can be 100% sure is real. And it's literally the only thing that we can be 100% sure is real. And yet, our current scientific paradigm tells us that it doesn't actually exist and that your conscious experience is an illusion. So think about that, realize how absurd it is, and then ask yourself, well, what else are they wrong about? And what new paradigm might we replace that with? And then if we look at ETs through that new paradigm, how does the whole narrative shift?
And the last one is disclosure.
It means a lot of different things to a lot of people. For me, the closest thing we're ever going to get to what most people think of as disclosure, press conference, stuff like that. It happened in 2001 at the National Press Club. I think that's the best we're going to get. And, we've got to stop looking to a solution external to ourselves for this. If you understand consciousness, you understand the science of consciousness, if you understand this revolution that's taking place in physics and medicine and biology and philosophy, all these fields converging around this question of consciousness, and if you embrace this emerging paradigm, then you start to understand that everything outside of you is a projection of what's within you. And, if you want to live in a post-disclosure world, then we have to work on ourselves and we have to create that within ourselves. And we have to become worthy of that. And that's what the CE5 community is all about.
Michael, it's been great speaking with you. Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated, and look forward to speaking to you again on the show. Absolutely not. You're right. Thank you for the questions, folks. There was a few other ones sent in, but just due to time constraints and also the body of the interview, we've answered quite a lot of those as well. Just to finish off on the quick fire round, it's a few words or sentences on various projects and topics, and then we'll kind of finish off. So the first one would be the Montauk project.
BS.
I thought you might say that. The next one would be, and this one's kind of for me, the Men Who Stare at Goats, the movie. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
Have you read the book?
No, I haven't.
Do you know what it's about?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Is it something you're going to see, or do you just choose not to?
I choose not to.
Okay.
But I believe in the abilities. I know they exist.
I just wondered, given the tone of the film, if you would avoid it, given it is more comical and obviously kind of fantasized. Given the nature of the thing, it doesn't have to be, does it? So the next one would be the friendly and hostile ET narrative.
I only believe in the friendly ET narrative. I'm not a subscriber to the hostile ET narrative, and I've never seen any convincing evidence. There's plenty of stories about hostile, negative experiences, negative abductions, but I'm highly suspect of those.
Dr. Steven Greers.
That's a very complex subject. He is someone that the UFO community should always be incredibly grateful for so many different things. The press club event where he brought out all these people for all of his interviews. But there's also a lot of fear mongering with, a giant fake UFO event and the government's going to be doing this and that.
Cool. CE5?
Very real, very important. The technique is everything.
Tom DeLonge?
Fear mongerer.
And the last one, I like to finish off with all the guests. What does disclosure mean to you?
Revealing the reality that advanced civilizations have been visiting our planet.
Excellent. That's great. Listen, buddy, it's been amazing talking with you. If you want to just let the listeners know how they can get in touch with you, how they can subscribe to your YouTube channel. So I'm going to move on just to finish off Dragon on the quickfire round. So I'm literally going to reel off some names of the cast, some places, and a few other topics. And I'm just looking for a word, a couple of words, or a couple of sentences. I'm not precious on each. Just your thoughts on each of these, okay?
Okay.
So not trying to catch out or anything. So the first one would be Travis Taylor.
Enthusiastic and brilliant. And yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah, he really is. He's super enthusiastic and he's very smart. And yeah, I guess the last word I'll use is friend. He's definitely a friend.
That's good to hear. Although not too friendly for season 2, because obviously we want to see you two kind of button heads again in a friendly, competitive kind of way.
Hey, you know what? I argue with my friends all the time, so I'm sure that there's probably a good opportunity that something at some point that'll happen.
Good. I'm Scottish. That's how we communicate as arguments. So that's good to hear.
That's right.
So the next one would be Brandon Fugel.
Gosh. That one goes deep. Probably one of my closest friends. Just an extremely kind and generous individual who is driven beyond anyone I've ever met and is willing to, be forthright and straightforward and is dedicated to figuring out and putting all of his resources into uncovering or at least getting a better understanding of what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch.
So the closest thing the planet Earth has to Bruce Wayne is Brandon Fugel, so I like him. The next one would be Eric Bard.
Genius. Eric, personally, is probably the smartest person I know. He is absolutely brilliant in so many different realms, and he is a brother. I love Eric, and I think that Eric is the unsung hero of Skinwalker Ranch, to be honest with you.
Nice. Next one, Jim Segala.
Jim Segala is a smart man. He's definitely
got that East Coast mentality, and he kind of can be a little bit, in your face a little bit. And, he and I did conflict a couple of times, but Jim is also a friend, and he's a very smart man with, a lot of knowledge and a lot to add.
Awesome. Next one, former guest of the show, Thomas Winterton.
Tom's a brother. Thomas is he is one of the hardest working people I've ever met, and is dedicated beyond dedicated to Skinwalker Ranch and to the individuals associated with it. And there is nothing that I've seen yet that guy can't do when it comes to, figuring things out. And he is, if I say Eric's the unsung hero, that's behind the science. Thomas Winterton is the lifeblood of Skinwalker Ranch and what keeps it up and running. And, day to day, he keeps the place going.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Jim Morse.
Uncle Jim. He's just, he's just a kind man that can make friends with anybody he meets. Jim's been invaluable to the relations with both the Native Americans and the community. And Uncle Jim is he's a dear friend, and just one of the kindest souls that I know.
Awesome. Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker Ranch. It's craziness wrapped up in a barbed wire fence, I guess. It's my favorite place on the planet, where when I'm away, I miss it. But when I'm here, sometimes I want to get the hell away. It is definitely a special place that I think holds some really incredible mysteries, or answers to mysteries and questions that hopefully we can get to the bottom of. But it is a place that needs to be respected.
Awesome. The next one would be your thoughts on CE5.
CE5.
So the contact method for summoning extraterrestrial craft in the sky.
Oh gosh.
I don't know.
I don't have an opinion on that. Honestly, I don't. That's
never had any of it tried on the site, or?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Might be interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely make note of that.
Next one would be UFOs.
I believe in them. Now. I've seen one, and I've seen multiple, and I'll take it to my grave. I know what I've seen, and until someone can give me a better explanation of what I've seen with my own eyes, UFOs are real, and I hope that we can find out more about them.
Okay. Second last one would be extraterrestrials.
I would say, to me, an extraterrestrial would be maybe anybody not from our realm. So I think that there's definitely an intelligence at play on Skinwalker Ranch. And so I would say, I don't know if an extraterrestrial is the little gray aliens that everyone, thinks and associates with an extraterrestrial, but I do believe that there is other life outside of just what we know on this planet.
Yeah, I think more and more the interdimensional, multi-dimensional theories coming into play with a lot of what's going on. So Skinwalker Ranch being a big part of that. And the last one I like to ask all my guests to finish on is their thoughts on disclosure.
I think it's vital. I think that, I know we take the standpoint that we want to share and we want to disclose. And I wish that there was more of that out there. I think that there are a lot of questions that there are already answers to, as long as people would disclose that information. So I think that disclosure is important, and as a human race and a better understanding, I think it's something that more needs to happen on every level of life.
Dragon, that is all we have time for. You've been really generous with your time this afternoon where you are, this evening where I... So we're going to move on to the kind of quick fire round, Ryan, and this will be as quick fire as you want it to be, because some of the topics I'd love to hear your thoughts on, just things that we can't cover in the body of the interview, otherwise this would go 4 or 5 hours. Maybe keep some of it for the next one. We'll do a second edition of the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm good at second editions, I guess.
Yeah, no, listen, I'll have to learn that as well, following your footsteps. So the first one's quite a big question, and I don't know how much you'll answer of this, but the phenomena itself, what do you think it is, Ryan?
I don't know. And I think that's the most responsible answer I can give. I have theories. I have thoughts. I think it could be a plethora of things. Phenomena is a way I really like to look at it, as Lou Elizondo does as well. I don't think we're dealing with one thing, one anomaly, one intelligence. And I do think it's everything and nothing all at once. So I think that's really, man, the most honest answer I can give. There's some UFOs I think could be extraterrestrial. There's some I think could be interdimensional, or us from the future, or none of those things. So yeah, I cannot pretend to have a solid answer of what the phenomenon or phenomena are. But I'm willing to go down any route to try to find answers, and I'm also willing to change my mind, which a lot of people are not willing to do. I'm not afraid to be wrong. I'm not afraid to change my mind, and yeah, I hope it's everything, and I hope whatever it is that it's here, it's interested in us for good reasons, no matter who, what, or where they are.
And that's, again, I'll say it's a fair response, because my opinion is very malleable and fluid on the topic. And I think for me, to boil it down, where I'm at right now with a lot of it is, and especially what Lou Elizondo and those types of people are getting at, it's not just what these things are, but I think a lot of it will answer why things are in general, and also how things kind of work. You know, if you ever want to know the meaning of life and the mysteries of the universe, I think a lot of that's tangled up within the phenomena, as it's called. So yeah, no, I see why you've went down that route. To the Stars Academy we've touched on, you said you agree with some things, disagree with others. I'm a massive fanboy for TTSA. That's not to say they are perfect by any means, but I feel I understand where they're going with what they're doing and why they're going about it that way. So let's talk a lot about To the Stars Academy.
Yeah, let's dive in.
So when those articles first hit, the first article in the New York Times, December 2017, and we got those videos, what were your initial responses and thoughts?
Holy shit. I mean, that was I literally said that out loud when I saw that article drop. I will admit, I was scared, just like anyone who wasn't involved with the UFO topic, looking at that and being like, oh my God, like what is happening here? So even as someone who has been looking at this topic for so long, and being blindsided with this fact that the U.S. Pentagon was looking into this, there were videos, they didn't know what they were. That was concerning. But look, that's what we've been chasing this entire time. So I thought it was a bombshell in the best way we can use that word. I thought it was exciting. I thought it was scary. And my initial impression was things are about to change. New York Times has covered UFOs in the past, but not to this extent, and not, with this many heavy hitters involved. So my initial impression was holy shit. And from there, it's just continued to be holy shit.
I had a massive frustration with it very quickly. I had all of those thoughts you had. However, just the way I think as well, if someone had asked the day before that article dropped, unless you had prior knowledge, if you asked any skeptic or just the general public, or even a believer, anyone in ufology, tomorrow a major news outlet is going to run a story confirming the government has a UFO program. They're going to release some videos, you're going to see some pictures, and they're going to be truly unidentified craft. what do you and you would get, I think you would get, no, that'll never happen, and yeah, that would be enough for me, that would be proof, that would be incredible. And for me, it dropped, it happened, and most people shrugged their shoulders and just went, oh, and moved on. And I was like, that's the problem, it's never enough. What would be enough? And it's, if you're talking about, you know, smoking guns, and that would have been it. And something myself and Jay talked about a few nights ago was the fact that an article, this is where we're at in ufology, an article has just dropped again in the New York Times that has cited crash retrieval programs, and there are quotes, regardless of the context, around off-world vehicles. Mm-hmm. And it made page 17. And for me, it's like, if someone had said a couple of years ago that sort of content would be in a major news outlet, you would never have believed them. And here we are getting that content, and people are still arguing and frustrated, and it's not, the conversation's definitely moving forward. There's been that paradigm shift in the way people are thinking, but it's still a very slow process as part of disclosure. And for me, it's never going to be enough for most people, and that's where I've had some frustrations with it. But TTSA, what they've done, whether people have liked it or not, there's been a lot of controversies. The media side of things, I think they've been pretty transparent from the start, that they've always announced they had the plan to raise shares. They had the plan to have the media part of the company. They wanted to write fiction and non-fiction novels to get their stories out there. They wanted to produce TV series and movies. What's your thoughts been on TTSA as a media company?
I think it's probably one of the most ambitious things Tom DeLonge could have done. I mean, I remember meeting Tom, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago at a UFO conference. He was like off in the corner, and I had to do a double take. I'm like, is that the guy that I used to listen to at concerts drunk when I was like 18 years old?
Yeah.
What is going on here? And then when I learned he had this extreme interest in the topic, I'm like, that's really cool. And then we saw the progression of Tom's interest just build and build and build, and he became more vocal about it up until this. And look, Tom has tried some incredible things in his time. He started different companies, stopped others. He is a passionate, ambitious person, and you can't fault him for that. So has he made mistakes along the way? Of course. You know, like I said earlier, there's tweets I've regretted. There's probably stuff he said that he's regretted. I'm thinking of the Joe Rogan interview in particular. But besides that, the creation of To the Stars Academy is interesting. I understand why people are skeptical or hesitant. I mentioned the name John Tenney before. This guy's been in this weird world of UFOs for decades and decades, and he's seen stuff like this happen before. So I don't blame the older guard, as it were, of ufology for saying, be careful. Like, people promise things and they don't happen, or it's not what you think. And maybe that could happen with what To the Stars is doing, but you're right. They've been extremely upfront and transparent about what they were doing from the very start. And Tom even said, I remember from the very, very start, said, my goal is to get information about UFOs, maybe build one even, but my goal also on the other side of that in negotiation is to paint the military-industrial complex in a good light and to promote the military as a positive thing. And we see that playing out. That's why all of this is painted as a threat, because that's what the military deals with. That's what the DOD deals with. That's what Lou Elizondo did for most of his life, is he fought terrorism. He fought, possible incursions of our nation. And I don't blame him for taking this threat narrative with all of this. So, yeah, man, I know that's kind of rambling, but at the end of the day, I highly respect everything they're doing. I think it's awesome that we're getting a podcast by To the Stars now, where we get to dig deeper and they do answer listener questions. And everything they're doing is leading to something. And there's a reason that all of this information is, I think, rolling out quicker than I think even To the Stars expected it to. What that reason is, I don't know. I know Jeremy McGowan spoke to both you and I about there's a reason for all of this. Trust me. Don't know when it's going to come, but it's probably going to come quicker than any of us expected. Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but I highly, highly respect the work that they're doing at To the Stars Academy. I try to remain an objective person in covering it, as responsible as a journalist or a freelance writer can do. I do not have any financial stake in the company, but I support them. I rock To the Stars Academy t-shirts. I've got all the books. I try to read between the lines of the truth and fiction in everything they're doing. And I look forward to everything that they come out with. And then it's up to you to decide whether you want to follow that or not. So, all the power to them. They are passionate. They have changed the entire landscape of the conversation. And I really, really look forward to whatever's to come next, for sure.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Tom DeLonge is not in this for money. He had more money than he ever needed. He's very passionate about the subject. Some of the things he's talked about on Twitter, the seven part tweets about Atlantis, and I don't know if you ever saw the what if there was a civilization here, what if the stories about Atlantis, and I imagine there's a lot of people he speaks to, maybe Lou, maybe Chris Mellon, I'll put off, we'd read those tweets and send him a little private message saying, Tom, come on, we told you about that, stop. However,
we've all been there,
yeah, that's it. But for me, I'm a massive fan of the company. Yep, there's that frustration around going a little bit dark, if you want to call it that, with the government involvement. However, I think that can be seen as a good thing too. So yeah, we'll definitely see what happens at the end of it. But let's hope it's going in a good place. Someone who has tenuous links with To the Stars, if only through a company that published his autobiography, would be Bob Lazar. What are your general thoughts? Because it's incredible. Bob Lazar as a story now is over 30 years old. A lot of controversy surrounds some of the discrepancies in his history, but let's be honest, most presidents, it seems these days, can't prove where they're born, what their race is, or where they went to school. So why not Bob Lazar? Again, is it nitpicking? Is there something to his story? What are your thoughts on how the Bob Lazar story has evolved?
I met Bob, I think the same year I met Tom DeLonge, actually, or saw Tom DeLonge. I guess I had a Bigfoot sighting of Tom DeLonge. I think it was him. I have always stood firm on my stance on Bob Lazar. I believe Bob Lazar did what he said he did. I believe he worked on something very exotic, something he could not understand, something his colleagues could not understand. And I do believe that he was told the things he was told, and that he saw what he saw. Other than that, is it true? Was it a extraterrestrial craft? Were there 9 saucers? Was he shown images of alien bodies? I don't know. I can't pretend to know. Or was that information given to him as part of some sort of disinformation campaign? That's very possible. So when it really comes down to it, man, it is one of the most sordid, controversial stories within ufology. It's interesting. It's extraordinary, but like Mellon always says, extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence or proof. And if Bob Lazar is going to come forward with these things, he has to be willing to take the hits and the scrutiny. And he has. And I think he's done a good job at battling a lot of that. So at the end of the day, I think he's a very genuine person in how he's related his story. And look, man, after meeting him face to face, it doesn't change if he's telling the truth or not. But I tend to think I'm a good judge of character. And this guy does not want fame. He does not want acknowledgement. He wanted to get the story out there and be done with it. But people have pulled him out of the woodwork to tell it again. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. I don't know. But end of the day, we still have the story. We have the book that came out in his own words, supposedly. If he did write the autobiography, I don't know. But it's an interesting story. It'll never go away. People are very passionate about it, as they are many other things. And I hope that someday we'll know, and maybe he'll finally get that vindication. He tends to think he did with this off-world vehicle thing in the New York Times, but I'm still iffy about all that. So yeah, again, hopefully we'll know the truth someday. But I believe that he saw and did what he said he did. What that was, I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah, you've covered that pretty well. I would just say, and this doesn't come from a place of knowledge, just a gut feeling. I don't think his story is finished yet, and I think there's still more to come. And whether that is
No.
Total debunking of the story and proving it's false, or the opposite, where he gets that proper vindication of, do you know what, or maybe not for him because he feels he's got it, but for those of us who maybe follow the story and want to know and want it to be true, that we find out, yep, here we go, this guy was telling the truth from the start. So I think that's still to come. What about your thoughts on the mysterious Skinwalker Ranch?
I think it's interesting. I watched the television show. I've spoken to individuals who've been on the ranch, whether as a journalist or as a investigator, and everyone says the same thing, man. It's a weird, strange place. It has an aura to it. Everything you could think of has happened there. It's a living laboratory of strange, weird stuff. And you just look at the history of the area itself, and that's fascinating also. So, I am completely open to the possibility that this is a condensed area of high strangeness, that maybe there's every possible mystery going on there we can think of. I look forward to the scientific exploration being done by the television show. Again, TV affords resources you cannot get anywhere else. And I can speak from experience. When working in the realm of television, I was given resources to investigate cases that I never would have gotten on my own or been able to really dive into. The Roswell incident in specific, I was able to get metals tested at an aerospace laboratory. I mean, could you imagine if I tried to do that myself or like crowdfund for something like that? It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Those things are expensive. So look, whether you love or hate the television show, they have the resources to do things that we have not been able to do before at that ranch. We have a very transparent and open owner right now who's willing to share that information, whereas the previous owner, everything he did had to be given over to the government because they were funding it. So look, I think it's awesome. I think it's exciting. I think it's another part of the puzzle to fit together. And yeah, man, let's hope to the stars and the guys over at Skinwalker can get together. Can you imagine what they could do if they put the resources together?
That would be like a good Christmas special. Christmas is always good for crossovers, like Simpsons, Family Guy, all that kind of stuff. And you could have like a History Channel, get those guys involved with each other. Brandon Fugal talking to Lou Elizondo or Tom DeLonge would be pretty cool. But yeah, I'd be all for that. The New York Times articles now, we've had the big splash in December 2017. We have had a couple of follow-up articles, and I think some people forget that it's not just been 2 articles. There's been quite a lot of little pieces, and Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal were quite keen to say that this is something that they've continued to report on, albeit it's not always been the big headline stories. What's your thoughts been on the impact they've had, and do you feel there's more to come from the New York Times?
Absolutely, there is more to come. I mean, if you look at the last 2 articles, a lot of people were, a little deflated on the information brought forward. A lot of it was already out there in the public. And like you mentioned earlier, like a page 17, that's easy to miss. Let's be completely honest. It's not on the cover. So a lot of people may not have even read it. But now you have this buzzwords of off-world vehicles, and that's what's out there now. And that was interesting that it came some 15 paragraphs into the initial article, not the 2017 one, but the current one. Really, you're gonna bury the lead that far into the article? But again, that all comes down to the editors and the people at the New York Times. I'm sure there was more to this article that Leslie and Ralph worked on that did not make it in. And none of us can pretend to have an answer to why that is or how. But I thought the first article was interesting. I am still really on the fence with the quotes by Reed and Eric Davis and all of that controversy behind the off-world vehicle comments, because it seems like it's just messy, man. It's messy. And the fact that the New York Times didn't put an exact quote or source to where that information came from, I don't understand why someone who carefully vets and fact checks as much as the New York Times does, why they would do that. I don't blame Ralph or Leslie for that. They stick firmly to the article they wrote, and that's what we have. But I know Ralph has said there's more to come. And if this is how it's going to come, like maybe one paragraph at a time, mixed in with all this other sort of surface level stuff or already substantiated things, that's fine. You know, we are used to reading between the lines in this field, and maybe that's the way we're going to get it now. I don't know. But yeah, I thought the articles were interesting. They weren't the bombshell that 2017 was, but Leslie Kane even said it was hard to really live up to that one because we had so much information. We dropped it all at once, and that's a powerful thing to do. And I do think, you know, slow and steady horse wins the race. So hopefully we'll get more as time goes on, but I have no doubt we're not done. Just from a business stance, the clicks and reads that they get from these UFO articles are massive. So of course they're going to keep doing it. Just from a business stance. And now it's up to Ralph and Leslie and whoever else is writing about it for that venue to do it as best they can in a responsible light, in a fact-by-fact basis. And maybe we will get more information on these off-world vehicles. I don't know.
Yeah, I think like Tim McMillan said, wasn't it, around 1,000 words he was under the impression had been cut out of it, which was around about half the article. And I wonder, this isn't opinion, but is it a tactic from a journalistic perspective? And if you're one of the multiple editors looking to put that sort of incredible story in your publication, do you just drop something in there that fantastic, if we want to use that word, in, you know, paragraph 15 about off-world vehicles because you've put it there, it's out there, but you've dangled the carrot, and it's buried, but it's buried in plain sight. And then in future, the tactic is you bring that a little bit further forward, and then it's on a bigger article and there's a bit more detail on it, and it's that drip feeding of information, because maybe it is a little bit too, you know, world news today to just put that on a front page. And I mean, there's not going to be a picture of a crashed flying saucer, you know, that's just a fact. So maybe this is, like you're saying, slow and steady wins the race. The information's there, it's slowly coming out, as frustrating as that might be. But the big thing for me is this has to go more international as well. There's a world outside of the United States, and they've got their part to play in this too. The UK, obviously, I've talked about this recently more and more. It's frustrating for me because the story gets no coverage here. It's on our news site, you'll get Sky News or BBC News, the biggest companies, and there might be a number 9 trending on the website as, you know, US DOD confirms UFO video is real. And that's it. It's nothing more than a reference at the side of the scroll on the page. There's no content on it. They're not particularly interested. You know, Jerry McCorbell done a radio interview on one of the BBC radio shows the other day, but there's multiple BBC radio channels, and again, it's a media that it's not getting the nation's eye, and it's just something that, particularly in the UK and Britain in general, the appetite isn't there for it. We would need something a bit bigger and more sensational to be in the news, you know, for the story to really take off. But for me, the international community has to get more involved, and it would be interesting to see, as we saw a little bit of Unidentified episode 4, where Luis Elizondo's, you know, going through South America and talking to these delegates and government officials. But we know South America has that history, and I think that connection still with this type of phenomena. They report it on their news. You see clips and UFO sightings being reported as this was seen today above, you know, some, you know, Mexican city, or I'm not saying every night, but it happens. You would never get that in the UK. It would never happen here. It would be a laughing, you know, joke regional news story, and that would be it. So that's where I think there's a lot of work still to be done. But yeah, hopefully there's more still to come in the near future as well. 2 more topics I want to get your thoughts on, and you touched on it earlier. You've got the Senate Intelligence Committee. As in the last 3 months, I've learned more about US politics than I ever could have at school. But the big headline from the recent, you know, acts where the UAP task force being mentioned as a thing. And again, that's another 2020 crazyism that we are talking about UAP task forces being created.
Mm-hmm.
But Space Force sounded crazy enough, but we've now got a UAP task force. What are your thoughts on the UAP task force and what it's going to be?
I'm excited and I'm also hesitant. I do wonder what the true impetus is behind this, Andy. And I mean, I think it's very good that Chris Mellon had a lot to do with how this bill is being drafted, the wording, what will be made available to the public, what will not. I think it's good. I think it was carefully done. And I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I believe that this bill in the United States will pass because I think there is no reason not to do it. But at the same time, we have to wonder why and who's involved. And look, Marco Rubio has been extremely vocal about it, and he's brought up some good points. Like, are these UFOs? Could they be Russian? Could they be from China? Are they extraterrestrial? And he made a good point of saying, I almost hope that it's extraterrestrial, because if it is a rival nation or another, bordering state doing things that we are not privy to, that is almost scarier. And I tend to agree with him with that. So I think it's interesting. UFO task force, that's a very loaded term. They're saying that it's being done through the naval intelligence, which is interesting because we've heard of these individuals within the naval intelligence here in the United States being involved with a lot of other UFO cases. Bob Lazar says that he met with some of these individuals. The Rendlesham guys say that naval intelligence was on the base with OSI, interviewing them during their experiences. So yeah, that's a fascinating part of the New York Times article. The recent one that I don't think a lot of people really paid attention to is, why is this being handed over to naval intelligence? Is it because of the new naval protocol of reporting UFOs? I don't know. It's interesting. So yeah, I'm hesitant because of the classified nature of this bill and what we will be privy to. We might not get anything, or we might get some really cool new videos or testimony. But that classified nature of it is where I'm like, they could slap anything classified and we won't get anything. So I think there are political moves being done by those involved. I think there's altruistic moves being done by other people involved with it. And I look forward to seeing where it goes. It's interesting, and never thought I'd see the day where we'd hear the term UFO task force. But we're living it, man. And we got to ride that wave. And hopefully it won't be a Project Blue Book Part 2, where it's all just to downplay it and, find a prosaic explanation, whether there is one or not. And if anything, it keeps the conversation going.
It does. And the last one I like to ask all my guests, Ryan, what are your thoughts on disclosure?
We're living it. And I don't, I think that's it. I think that the New York Times article was a huge disclosure, the 2017. I think disclosure happened for Kevin Day when he tracked those UFOs. I think it happened for Fravor when he saw it. I think the individual level of this, Andy, is where it's at and how disclosure happens, person by person, experience by experience. I do not believe we're ever going to get that White House press conference here in the United States or in Parliament elsewhere or in Mexico, China, Japan, whatever it may be. I don't think all the world governments are going to come together and say, aliens are real. They've been here. They've crashed here. They've landed here. We knew about it. Sorry about that. I don't think that's ever going to happen. We're getting an interesting rollout by the New York Times and by diligent researchers putting in so much effort to get information out there. And maybe we can force the hand of world governments or the governments of our respective nations to tell us what they know. But I don't think it's going to happen, man. I think their hand would have to be forced by the phenomenon itself. And I think that's what's happening. Witness by witness, experiencer by experiencer. And maybe gradually we will get to a point where we can all accept that something is going on and it could change humanity forever, whether that's good or bad.
Awesome. Quickfire, you can say as little or as much as you like on each one, but it's just some of the topics that we've not necessarily managed to get to within the body of the interview. So the first one would be your thoughts on To the Stars Academy.
Yeah, well, they certainly done a lot to get our interest in the topic going. Without them, we wouldn't have Congress taking it seriously. Right now, they brought it to the news. I certainly don't agree of looking at things in terms of a threat that necessarily don't understand, but maybe that's not the way they really see it. Maybe it's just to get interest from the government to take this issue seriously. So they're certainly an important player on the stage, and they've done a lot to move the field forward.
No, that's great. Ingo Swann would be the next one.
Well, I was lucky enough to meet Ingo at conferences and even to visit him about a week before he passed on. Certainly, a really amazing person that opened our eyes to these topics. He was the ultimate stubborn person. Going back to that Einstein quote, he would not give in and he would not quit until Russell, Targ, and Alputov let him try out his coordinate system and his other ways of doing viewing. So without Ingo, we wouldn't be as far along as we are now with a lot of RV and some of these other topics.
Yeah, it was certainly someone who, when you think about thinking outside the box, he was outside the box and thinking outside of that box as well. So definitely someone who was a huge part of this whole subject. For you, would you go with UFO or UAP?
It's fine to change the names of things because if you call it UAP, it doesn't have the baggage maybe that UFOs do, but we don't want to leave UFOs behind either. I mean, we've had 100 years of this weird and freaky phenomena that we called UFOs. So if you want to call them UAPs, because that's, again, calling it like remote viewing, if it's more acceptable to the mainstream media and the government to refer to it that way, then that's obviously okay, because they feel like, it's politically correct to talk about this topic now. So maybe that's what we need to bring it more into the mainstream.
The next one is someone who has a massive say in both To the Stars Academy and Resonance Viewing. It would be Hal Puthoff.
Yeah, I mean, Hal, the fascinating thing about Hal, we knew him as someone involved in remote viewing research. He was a laser physicist like Russell Targ. He got interested in the subject. He got Ingo to come out to California. And we all knew him as this person who, apart from studying other topics in physics, kind of like exotic vacuum objects and ball lightning, the Casimir effect, these other interesting quantum phenomena. We knew him in RV, but it was quite a shock when he told us in 2018 at the IRVA SSE conference that he had also been studying UFOs this whole time, too, for the government. So there's still probably a lot about Hal that we don't know, but he's certainly been a very important player to bring this out to the public and to kind of be this go-between, I guess, between the government and the rest of us to tell us what they've really been looking at.
The next one would be Antarctica as a place of interest.
Yeah, it's not something that I really know a huge amount about. Perhaps we'll uncover what's ever going on there. I just hear the same thing that the rest of you hear, so I don't really have any special information about Antarctica, apart from these ideas that, we've been exposed to, that perhaps there's more going on there than we know about.
Certainly. And the last one I'd like to finish off with all my guests is disclosure. What are your thoughts? What is disclosure?
Well, it's the topic of the day, and it's coming at us. But again, the main thing I would reinforce is that it's our own inner disclosure that has to accompany the outer disclosure. That's my personal bent on all this. You can only go so far on the outside as you're willing to go on the inside, because any new information, paradigm change demands things of you too, right? It's not a free ride. It demands that you change and you step up to play a bigger role. So you need to think about, in terms of your own development, to match the disclosure on the outside. I think the pace of disclosure will go as fast as we're comfortable with it. And those of us that are involved in this research need to be constantly, stepping up our game. And personally, on a creative level, like your listener asked before, to be fully there, to be fully present, and to withhold judgment, but to be looking at new information, to see this in the biggest possible way rather than fitting it in to a pre-existing box.
That is all for this week's show. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to leave the podcast a review on your chosen platform. You can like, retweet and subscribe. That would all be very much appreciated. The shows are being uploaded onto YouTube as we speak more and more. You can sign up at patreon.com/That UFO podcast to access the shows ad-free as well. Please get in touch on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, That UFO podcast. Of course, on Twitter, it's at UFO UAPAM. And again, folks, as always, keep looking up. You never know what you might see.
It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer, more like a hubcap designed by Chaucer, a little Baroque and quite steampunk, like Alice was playing bass for the Parliament of Folk. The little fucker hovered right outside of my window, and when I shoved out the screen, he made it an issue. I don't think he expected me to see his ass, but I'd had some champagne and smoked a little grass. Meditative game of state full on meta. I can't imagine how it could have been any better. I got to the top of the stairs and there he was. Like, you awake? I was about to abduct you, cuz. I jumped back and nearly kissed myself, and I climbed out the window after the elf, and I woke up in my bed and there was something on my head and everything was weird and everything was red. And I called out to my boys. They thought this was noise. They thought it was a dream. They thought it was my toys. They thought it was my problems, and they think I should seek therapy, and I don't know what to do because it doesn't really scare me. If you really want to know who I think I be, I think it's you and me and us and we and him and her and that and she and that thing over there and what's that, Jake? If we're being serious, open your mind, consider your heart, consider time, consider your space, consider your lies, consider your life, consider your eyes. It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer. It wasn't a tic-tac and